We are just 17 days away from the NFL draft, and that means we're about to gear up big time. Universities are finishing up their pro days, athletes visiting with teams. Of course, you got to get those draft night outfits ready as well. Ryan Wilson has put out his first 3-round mock, and this one does include one very big trade. We're going to tell you about it. By the way, you can find the entire thing on CBSSports.com. But since it is Mock Draft Monday, we are going to go through the entire first round right now. So let's welcome in the guy behind the article, Ryan Wilson, also fellow draft expert Josh Edwards here. Josh, we're going to give you the uneven numbers, the odd numbers, if you will. Ryan, you're going to take the even ones. Let's start with the Titans at 1. That's how it works. It's math. I know. It's very advanced. Titans at 1. Josh, if the Titans don't move out of this position, I mean, is it a slam dunk that they take Cam Ward?
Oh, yeah, it's a slam dunk. It feels like the worst kept secret in the NFL to this point. Everything that Tennessee has done this offseason feels like it's been setting up the eventuality that they will use the number 1 overall pick on Cam Ward. They went out, they addressed the offensive line. They have hardly addressed the quarterback position. So unless they're going to run it back with Will Levis for another season under Brian Callahan, I think that Ward is for sure going to be the pick at number 1 overall. And then the draft really begins at number 2 overall.
Okay, so let's go to number 2 because it is interesting. You have the Browns there. Colorado had its pro day on Friday. Ryan got to go out there for that. And the Browns basically sent everyone. I mean, they had their owner, their GM, head coaches, pretty much anybody in a decision-making process. Ryan, you got to see both Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. It seems like the Browns will take someone from Colorado. We know that. Which way do you think they're going to go, though?
Yeah, so this 3-round mock draft that I did, Amanda, was what I think should happen, what I would do, and I took Shedeur Sanders. In reality, and you talked about everybody from the Browns organization, from the owner on down, who were there in person, the feeling at the pro day was that they were there to see Travis, and Travis put on a show, and I think Shedeur actually had a really solid outing as well. But it seems like, as we sit here, despite the fact that I have Shedeur Sanders going 2 overall, feels like the Browns might go in a different direction, even though they currently have Deshaun Watson and Kenny Pickett on the roster. One guy's injured, one guy's been traded twice in 2 seasons as their current QB room. So maybe they circle back in round 2 to get a quarterback here. I went with Shedeur Sanders, the only other first-round quarterback I have graded in this draft as a top 32 pick. But in reality, we may see something different in the form of Travis Hunter or maybe even Abdul Carter.
Josh, so let me ask you this. I mean, you're a Browns fan. Who would you like to see in this position?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on when you ask me during the process, because at one point it was Abdul Carter, the pass rusher from Penn State. I'm kind of leaning towards Travis Hunter at this point in time because I think about the Browns being so analytically driven, and the idea of having a player capable of playing both sides of the ball feels like the supreme analytical choice, in my opinion. So in today's NFL, you have to be able to score points. Are the Browns going to be able to score points without having a player like Travis Hunter at the wide receiver position? Yeah, they have Jerry Jeudy, who was fantastic last year. Most of last season was spent alongside Amari Cooper, so the focus wasn't entirely on him. I think having a player like Hunter gives them some more dynamic ability, maybe opens up that offense a little bit more.
They do need someone to throw him the ball, however, and if Kenny Pickett gets hurt, we don't know what's going to happen. Let's go to the Giants at 3, and this is where we do find Travis Hunter, according to Ryan. However, look, Josh, I was looking at your mock draft. You have them taking Abdul Carter. This is a big decision, Josh, for the Giants at 3.
Yeah, well, similar to the Browns, the Giants had a large contingent in Boulder as well for the Colorado Showcase. And presumably that would be to check out Shedeur Sanders. It would be to check out Travis Hunter. I think at the end of the day, they will make the decision. They will do whatever Cleveland does not. So I think it's either going to be Abdul Carter, who I mentioned earlier, or it's going to be Travis Hunter Jr., whichever is available at that point. But I think Hunter would be the preference because they do have a need at cornerback, and I do think that that may be his best position at the next level. So if he's there at number 3 overall, I think it's an easy choice for the Giants to take Travis Hunter Jr.
Either way, look, you can't go wrong with either one of those guys. Both incredible players, top 2 players in the draft by far. Let's go to the Patriots. What is supposed to be the Patriots at 4. Bada-bop, we have a trade here. Ryan, you have the Bears moving up. They have the 10th overall pick, moving up to 4. So how is this trade going down, and who are the Bears taking now at 4?
By the way, that should be the new chime for any trades in the NFL. Bada bop. So let's do a little bada bopping. There it is. And here's the thing. So offensive line makes a ton of sense for New England. But if they trade down and they can still get an offensive lineman and get more picks to help out Drake May, I'll sign up for that. So Chicago moves up from 10 to 4. New England moves down to 10. Then they get Chicago's pick at number 41. And then they get a 2026 third-round pick next year. So the Bears are moving up and taking what could be the second player in the draft, as Josh and I have discussed. They're taking Abdul Carter, the edge rusher, paired him opposite Montez Sweat. And now you're getting after it on defense because that was a big issue a year ago. Montez Sweat was basically doing it all by himself. They traded back into the draft last year on day 3 to get an edge rusher who was a situational pass rusher. And I think if you could have Abdul Carter opposite Montez Sweat, you're not double teaming either one of those guys. And then your defense can do a lot more heavy lifting to help out Caleb Williams as he heads into year 2 and year 1, of course, with Ben Johnson. And I'll come back and talk about the Patriots and what their long haul is since it's a 3-round mock draft. But for now, we'll see if Patriots fans are okay with the idea of moving down a few picks and stockpiling some other picks for future consideration.
I think Ryan actually threaded the needle here a little bit because the conversation is, are the Bears going to take a trench player? Are they going to go with a luxury pick that is maybe a Boise State running back, Ashton Jeanty? They took a luxury pick, but they also addressed the trenches by moving up in this trade and getting a player like Abdul Carter. He is somebody that can make a difference for your organization, and everything that Chicago has done this offseason is done with one intention in mind. It's to expedite the rebuild with Caleb Williams and new head coach Ben Johnson. So I do like the addition, the aggressiveness that Chicago shows here to move up and solidify a true difference maker on defense.
Yeah, that's on defense because we know they've been working so hard on that offensive line, which they definitely needed to. Let's go to the Jags here at 5. It's interesting. On CBSSports.com, we have 7 mock drafts up, both of you guys included. Every single person has them taking Michigan defensive lineman Mason Graham. Josh, let me ask you, why does everybody agree on this pick?
I think people view Graham as being one of the blue chip talents in this draft class, first of all, and it's a very limited supply. When you look at what Jacksonville needs, having a player like Mason Graham that can impact the opposing quarterback, allow him to rush up the middle, which is the quickest path to the quarterback, allows you to open up more one-on-one opportunities for players like Josh Hines-Allen and like Trayvon Walker, who just had his 5th-year option picked up as well. So I think when you can have a player like that, where you can bring pressure from all different points, that's going to allow Jacksonville to do a lot more in the secondary, which is a position that I think they will probably address somewhere on day 2.
Ryan, just really quickly, when it comes to the Jags, I mean, later on in the draft, do you feel like they're going to have to take a quarterback at some point to have someone behind Trevor Lawrence?
I don't know if it's an urgent need, especially if you have other holes to fill. I mean, there's a reason this team's picking 5th overall, right? They have a new head coach. They have a new GM. So they're trying to get better quickly. And if you can keep Trevor upright, and they signed Walker Little, re-upped his deal. They have Anton Harrison, their first-round pick from a few years ago, playing right tackle. They might want to get some help on the interior offensive line more so than a backup quarterback. But I would imagine maybe on day 3, late day 3, you think about a developmental player. Or maybe you sign someone, a veteran, after the draft is over once you get into OTAs. But I wouldn't put it up there as a first, second, or even tertiary need just because this team is close, but they've flailed the last few years in a disappointing fashion. So if they can figure out the little details, and Mason Graham goes a long way, as Josh described, I think that gets them where they want to go in that division. I
was just curious because it has been a topic of conversation here at CBS Sports HQ. Let's go to the Raiders at 6. And they did just give their quarterback, Geno Smith, a nice extension here. And Ryan, you are gifting Eugene Cyril III, I hope I said the middle name correctly, a weapon in wide receiver Ted McMillan.
Bada bop, you got it. Good job. You could be the draft analyst, Amanda. You got it all figured out. So
yeah.
Right. So Geno Smith is there, new deal, and I'm torn between a guy that you covered last fall in Ashton Jeanty, the running back, who could certainly go this high, or Ted McMillan, who's probably almost a foot taller than Ashton Jeanty and plays wide receiver, and he's a huge target, and he feels like he would be more in sync with Geno, or what Geno is looking for, than what we saw towards the end of Geno's time in Seattle with DK Metcalf, when it felt like they weren't always on the same page. And then you pair Ted McMillan with Brock Bowers, who could arguably be the best player in the NFL going into year 2 at the level at which he played last year with some suspect quarterback play. It just makes too much sense. Now, if they win Ashton Jeanty, I would certainly love that as well, but I think that's going to be what it comes down to, whether it's Ted McMillan, the huge catch radius receiver out of the U of A or whether they get running back here. But I went with Tevin McMillan just to help push that ball down the field because we know Geno can throw the ball so well to the second and third levels.
It's interesting that you did mention Ashton Jeanty because pretty much in every draft that we have seen, he is a top 10 pick, and not in this one. He is falling, so a little teaser. He is not a top 10 pick. We'll get to that later on. Let's go to the Jets at 7. And it's interesting, Josh, this is a team with a lot of moving parts. It's in transitions, a lot of holes to fill here, but Ryan does have them taking a spot they need to fill. That's right tackle, and Missouri's Armand. Is it Mimba or Mimbo? I always forget which one. Correct me. Someone say it correctly.
I think it's Membu, Ryan.
Yeah.
He's just going to nod his head and say that that's correct. We're going to find out specifically on draft night. A little undersized, but Josh, what do you think about this selection?
Well, first of all, Amanda, I think that Ryan has been looking at some of those mock drafts on CBSSports.com. I think he's been looking off my paper a little bit because Membu is somebody that I've had going to the Jets quite often over the past couple of months. Everybody talks about Ben Johnson coming from Detroit, a structure that believes in building through the trenches, having a solidified offensive line. Well, you know what? So did Aaron Glenn. He comes from the same structure. So I think that he's going to want a solidified offensive line as he continues to build this offense. And Membu is a part of that discussion. You drafted Olu Fashanu in the first round a year ago. Now go get your right tackle of the future with Membu there on the right side. Similar structure to like a Tristan Wirfs in years past. So now you can run the football as apparently they want to do with a platoon system moving forward. And you've got a really structured offensive line.
Panthers at 8. Ryan has them taking edge rusher Mike Green out of Marshall. Ryan, this is a decent bit higher than a lot of other mock drafts. So why do you have him as a top 10 pick?
I think he's top 10 all day long with the on-field productivity. Transferred from UVA, got to Marshall, and no one plays harder for 60 snaps a game on either side of the ball than Mike Green. Now, there may be some off-field concerns, and he addressed them at the Combine. He was forthright with those concerns before they were even brought up by anyone else in the media. So we'll see how teams feel about it. The teams I've talked to think that he's still a first-round talent, and if we're going to go from that premise, here's the thing. He gets after it. Go watch him play against Ohio State. He looked every bit like a Power 4 edge rusher, and not only that, by the time his season was over, he was one of the best players in college football. In Carolina, they have Jadeveon Clowney and DJ Wonnum. They could certainly use some depth behind those two players. And Jadeveon Clowney, is known more as a run special at this point as opposed to a pass rusher. So Mike Green would give them some juice off the edge and sort of rebuild that defense after they moved on from the likes of Frankie Louvu and, of course, Brian Burns, who they sent to the New York Giants. So strictly on the field, Mike Green's a top 10 talent, and we'll see where he ends up going. But it would not shock me to see him start to hear his name called in this range here.
Very nice, Ryan. Josh, we appreciate it. We are only getting started 1 through 8 there. Taking a look, we're going to get through all 32 here in the next hour. Cam Ward going number 1 overall to the Titans. A lot of questions about what the Browns are going to do at 2. Were they going to go with Travis Hunter, potentially Shedeur Sanders? Ryan has him taking Shedeur Sanders, and then Travis Hunter going to the Giants at 3, and the Browns trading up to get Abdul Carter at 4. The Patriots moving down to the 10th overall pick. So speaking of the Patriots, they do trade down. Yes, they got a guy named Brady a lifetime ago. Not great at drafting recently. So who do the Patriots take at 10? We'll tell you coming up. Welcome back in to HQ Spotlight here, going through Ryan Wilson's very first 3-round mock. You can find the entire thing on CBSSports.com. We're doing the first round. Let's pick it up with the Saints at 9. And Josh, Ryan has them taking offensive tackle Kelvin Banks out of Texas. He's his OT1, if you will. What do you think about this matching and pairing for the Saints?
Well, I'm glad that Ryan did this. I know that he is high on Banks. I personally am high on Banks as well, so we see eye to eye there. This feels like a very Saints thing to do, and I mean that in the sense that they value taking offensive linemen in the top 50. Most of their offensive line that they have come within the top 50. So taking another offensive lineman here, maybe give Derek Carr a little bit more protection to find Chris Olave, Brandon Cooks, Rashid Shaheed, some of these other pass catchers that they've assembled. I think it's a good fit moving forward because Carr is not somebody that's going to uplift the rest of the roster per se, but he's somebody, if you put him in the right structure, he can make plays for you. And I think that's what the Saints are aiming for here as they try to get back to the top of the NFC South.
a good amount of Texas players in this first round. But for now, let's go to the 10th overall pick. And this is where we saw that trade from earlier. The Bears that had the 10th overall pick moving up to 4. So the Patriots now sit at 10. Ryan, I mentioned going into this, not necessarily known for drafting all that well. So what should they do at 10?
Bada bop. What are they going to do here? They're moving down to 10, and they're taking an offensive lineman in Will Campbell. You still get Will Campbell. You put him at left tackle. I know people are concerned about his arm length. He made it clear, and if you just watch him play, he played in the SEC since his freshman year, and he played against some of the best players on the planet in college football, and he was incredibly successful. So put him at left tackle, and then go from there. Don't force the young man to move to guard if he's not yet a guard. And in terms of the rest of the draft, I'm only doing the first round here, but I'll tell you what I was able to do for the whole 3 rounds for the for the Patriots here, Amanda. Derek Harmer, the interior defensive lineman in round 2, early in round 2. With the pick they got from the Bears, Zay Frazier, the cornerback out of UTSA. And then they get 2 wide receivers, and by that I mean they get Jaden Higgins, the big target out of Iowa State, and then they get the wide receiver / running back, who you covered back in week 1, I think, Nevada SMU game, Brashard Smith, who had a great season, a great pre-draft workout, and he gives you a lot of versatility in the backfield, sort of like the running backs we've seen during the Bill Belichick / Tom Brady era are now at the disposal of Drake May, should Brashard Smith make his way to New England.
Ryan always likes to say, don't overthink it. If you've got a good player that has been productive, don't overthink it. Just take that player in the first round. We've seen that happen with Brian Branch. Malachi Starks is somebody that is just a really sound football player. Will Campbell, you just have to trust the tape. This is a player that has good technique. He's able to make up for some of those lack of length deficiencies with that technique and the way that he plays. So this is an ideal scenario for the Patriots to move back, get some additional draft capital. Maybe you can find another wide receiver there on day 2 and still get your left tackle of the future for Drake May.
Josh, I like that you mentioned Brian Branch here, because this next player who Ryan has going to the 49ers at 11, Texas cornerback Jahdae Barrett, actually says he reminds him of Brian Branch, who, of course, was named to his first Pro Bowl, his second season in the league just this past year. Do you like that comparison for Barrett, and how do you feel about him on the 49ers?
I think both of them approach the game in a similar way, and that is that they are both true professionals. Listening to him speak at the NFL Combine, he's somebody that kind of blew me away with his maturity, just the way that he craves watching film and getting better as a player. He came across as a great teammate. So all of those intangibles that you look for, similar to a Brian Branch, I think you can also find in a Jahdae Barrett. When you look at what San Francisco has done this offseason, obviously a lot has been pulled out of that roster. So now you have to put some players back into it. Charvarius Ward is out the building. Now you've got a player like Jahdae Barrett who could potentially play inside and outside for the 49ers, similar to what Kansas City has done with Trent McDuffie. I think it certainly fills a need for this organization. And also you get a known commodity here with Jahdae Barrett.
49ers at 11. We find the Cowboys at 12. It's been interesting to keep track of the Cowboys at 12, because for a while Ashton Jeanty was locked into this position, no longer. And Ryan, you're going with a guy that you say has been flying under the radar, offensive lineman Tyler Booker out of Alabama. So why has he been flying under the radar, and is he going to pick up steam, potentially landing in this position?
Yeah, he's sort of flying under the radar at over 300 pounds, Amanda, because of the name you mentioned just before. Ashton Jeanty is a super sexy pick if you're looking to jumpstart an offense, whether it's in Dallas or somewhere else. And I get it. And you could go Ashton Jeanty here. You could go wide receiver. You could go edge rusher. I went with Tyler Booker because he might be the best offensive lineman in this draft class by the time it's all said and done. They have their bookend set at tackle. They have their center set in Cooper Beebe, but they need help on the interior. They have Tyler Smith, who's been good, but other than that, the right guard position is going to be wide open. And I think Tyler Booker, who dominated in the SEC, has an opportunity to not only be a day one starter, but to be like a decade-type starter and solidify the middle of that offense, and then keep Dak Prescott upright, make things easier for CeeDee Lamb. And this running back class is so incredibly deep. Circle back later on day 2, even into day 3, and find some running back depth. You signed Javonte Williams, so you have a short-term option there. But I think Tyler Booker if he goes top 10, 10 to 15, I think you're getting him exactly where he should end up going off the board.
Cowboys fans get real fussy about whoever they take in the draft. So I hope that if this is the pick, they come back, they find this, and they're pleased with the pick. Let's go to the Dolphins here at 13. And Ryan has them taking defensive lineman Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. Most pressures by a Big Ten defensive lineman, or defensive tackle, I should say, in the past 2 seasons. Josh, is this someone who could help this defense from day one?
Yeah, most pressures also happens to be a massive human being. This is a player that I think a lot of people thought was going to be taken in this range just a month ago. I think they thought he was going to do better through the testing portion of the pre-draft process. But it makes a lot of sense for Miami because they have a clear need along the interior defensive line. Christian Wilkins left via free agency last year to Las Vegas. You still have Zach Seiler there, but Calais Campbell has moved on. So I think adding some more bodies to that room and elevate your run defense is a good outcome here for the Dolphins in the first round.
We find the Colts at 14, and this is our first tight end off the board, Tyler Warren out of Penn State. Ryan, in your article, you give a lot of praise to this young man, saying it appeared, although this is not the case, that he was responsible for about 75% of the Nittany Lions offense, and also that he's done more for his draft stock than almost anybody.
Yeah, thank you for reading that article, Amanda. You're the one, so I appreciate that because you are you're actually using my words and not against me, so I appreciate that. I think he actually ended up being 49% of the Penn State offense, which is still mind-boggling. And to quote Josh, quoting me, don't overthink it if you're the Colts. Anthony Richardson has struggled, and I think that's probably understating it. He's going to have some competition from Daniel Jones. And if you want to make life easy for your young quarterback, give him a player who is always open in the middle of the field, that can take short passes and make them into long gains, and that's what Tyler Warren did. And to echo what you just mentioned here, Amanda, coming into the season, over the summer, we watched Tyler Warren. He was probably late day 2, early day 3 in terms of draft stock, and now he is going to be a top 15 talent. And this feels about where he's going to go. The Colts need tight end help, and if he goes earlier than this, I could see that as well, but I don't think he gets past 15, and the furthest is probably 20, where the Denver Broncos could be looking for a little tight end help, even though they did get Evan Ingram.
Let's go to the Falcons at 15 here. Ryan has him taking edge rusher Michael Williams out of Georgia. Josh, if I'm the Falcons and I just see a defensive player coming out of Georgia, I'm going to be happy no matter what, because that is what they give to the NFL.
Yeah, let me consult my notes here over the past 10 years, and it's going to say the same thing. The Falcons need pass rush help. They were hoping to correct it last year when they went out and traded for Matthew Judon. Obviously, it did not play out the way that they had hoped, but you find a player who played his high school football in the state of Georgia. He played his college football in the state of Georgia. Now he gets to play his professional football in the state of Georgia. I think this is a player that has a tremendously high ceiling if you're able to tap into that at the next level. He's got the prototypical size that you look for in a pass rusher, just still a little bit raw and unrefined. I think you're going to have to pull that out of him if you're the Falcons, but a player that I don't think would have been available if the production had matched the potential.
We find the Cardinals at 16, and for some reason I'm thinking fantasy football here. Ryan, you have them taking wide receiver Matthew Golden out of Texas. I mentioned, look, a handful of guys out of Texas in this first round here. You like to use the word explosive. How much can he elevate this Cardinals offense?
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So Marvin Harrison Jr., we didn't have a time on him. I don't know if he had one out of high school either, so we don't know how fast he is. He is not a burner. We saw that last year. He still had 800 yards receiving as a top 5 pick, but you're going to get him some help. Yes, they have Zay Jones, and yes, they have Michael Wilson, but you talked about the explosivity of what we get from Golden, and he's a 4.29 guy. That's what he ran at the Combine. He's a track star. He transferred from University of Houston, and my comp for him coming into the draft process here is Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison was a little lighter, about 10 pounds lighter coming out of USC, and Jordan Addison's stats in year 1 for Minnesota, and that's with a legit number 1 in Justin Jefferson, were 70 catches, 911 yards, 10 touchdowns. Now, Justin was hurt for some of that season, but I think Golden can give you that sort of production opposite Marvin Harrison Jr. We know about Trey McBride, who just got that big deal. James Conner in the backfield. So this offense suddenly looks to be a lot better than they were a year ago with Kyler Murray and Jonathan Gannon going into year 3.
Ryan, Josh, hang on just a second. We're going to recap what we have done here, 9 through 16 teams. In this area, you know, look, you had those elite players at the very top of the draft. These teams really filling their holes here. Nobody clipped that off, please. Thank you. Ending with the Cardinals taking Matthew Golden at 16. All right, so here's the interesting thing. Pete Prisco has this young man 5th overall. You're pretty much not going to find a mock draft with him going below 10. So why is Ashton Jeanty still on the board? How far is he going to fall? We'll answer that next. Welcome back into Spotlight on this Monday here. It is Mock Draft Monday. We're picking things back up with the Bengals at 17. Ryan Wilson, the guy there in the middle, has them taking safety Nick Emmanwori out of South Carolina. And Josh, because I do read Ryan's articles, I can tell you that his measurables, it looks like he was built in a lab specifically that turns out safeties. Why is this guy so good?
If there were a short list of the top performers at the NFL Scouting Combine, Emmanwori would certainly be near the top. Just incredible size, 6'3", 220 pounds, tested off the charts. This feels about the right range for him to be taken. I've often had Seattle or Tampa Bay, who are the next 2 picks, landing Emmanwori. I do think that Cincinnati needs help along the defensive line, whether that's an interior defender or another pass rusher, with the uncertain future of Trey Hendrickson there in Cincinnati. But this feels about right for Emmanwori. So you give Al Golden, the new defensive coordinator, a true difference maker that he can move around the field and put in different places to excel. I do think it makes a lot of sense for the Bengals here.
It is really interesting, Ryan, because not only do I read your articles, sometimes I see what people on the Google are saying. And I was looking up this next kid, Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky. Sounds like a law firm, but either way, DB out of Kentucky. And there is another specific news outlet that quoted this pick specifically for the Seahawks. And they called it, quote, a nasty curveball, because some people do not have a first-round grade on this guy. So please, your reaction to that, sir, and then also why you think he would be a good fit for the Seahawks.
Yeah, you see Josh shaking his head. Josh covers Kentucky football, so he's known about Maxwell Harrison long before the rest of us. And he might only be 183 at 5'11", but he reminds me a lot of Devin Witherspoon, the young man they drafted a few years ago with a top 5 pick out of Illinois, who plays like he's 220. He plays like he's built like Nick Emmanwori. He had a shoulder concern last season that kept him out of some games, but when he's on the field and healthy, he is electric, and I think he is every bit the first-round pick. Some teams like him as CB1 outside of the Travis Hunter conversation, because Travis Hunter is in his own category, and I love the idea of thinking about him going to Seattle, because John Schneider and the Seattle Seahawks usually zig when everyone else zags in terms of who they end up taking in round 1 especially, and this feels like a John Schneider / Seahawks pick, and I love the idea of him being out there with Devin Witherspoon and Reek Woolen and Julian Love and bolstering a secondary that was up and down last year. I would imagine Mike McDonald could certainly find a way to use all those young defensive backs on the field together.
So really it needs to be a nasty curveball in a good way, and you're welcome, Seahawks fans. Let's travel all the way to the country, almost to the complete other side. Let's go to the Bucs here at 19, going with Jalen Walker out of Georgia. He can really line up anywhere along that defensive line. Josh, how do you like this pick? And really, though, because he can line up almost anywhere, how did the Bucs use him?
Yeah, well, first of all, anybody covering Seattle cannot be complaining about possible curveballs for the Seahawks, because that's kind of John Schneider's thing in the NFL draft. But specifically as it relates to the Buccaneers here, you move on from Joe Tryon-Shoyinka in free agency. Yeah, you have Yaya Diaby, who can apply the occasional pass rush for your franchise. But I think just throwing another body there and being able to bring pressure from different alignments is a good outcome. I think at some point in this draft, they were going to go get a pass rusher. So doing it here in the first round, I think certainly checks a box for that organization.
He just paused. Ryan, you want to follow up anything there? Or should we just move on? Look, another defensive player out of Georgia. It's going to be good. Congratulations, Buccaneers. Let's go to the Broncos at 20 here. And Ryan, finally, we find Ashton Jeanty falling all the way to 20. The Broncos are going to be happy to have him. But why is he falling so far?
This actually makes me feel bad, and you know Ashton Jeanty, you covered him in the fall for Boise State. Our buddy Lee J. Dooswell and I got a chance to spend some time with him at the Combine. He's a great young man. Was running as a Heisman finalist, and this feels unfair to him because I think realistically, when we get down to draft night in 17 days, he's going to be a top 10 pick and probably top 6. But he slips here just because of the way the things played out ahead of him, mostly because Ted McMillan went to the Raiders instead of them targeting a running back. And here's where he lands, and sometimes fit matters, Amanda. Usually we talk about that in terms of quarterbacks. But imagine going to a system where Sean Payton is the coach. Bo Nix is coming off a fantastic rookie season. There's a need in the running back room, and you have dogs at the skill position player, other skill position players that can help you out. So this is worst case scenario for Ashton Jeanty in terms of him going off the board here. He goes a full 10 to 15 picks higher. And I think it's actually more likely by the time that my final mock draft comes around in 16 days that he ends up being a top 10 pick. And we could see another running back go here, Amanda. Maybe a Marion Hampton out of UNC could be an option because he's gaining some steam down the stretch.
Worst case scenario, maybe in terms of falling, but Broncos fans, look, I think he'd be phenomenal, and we saw what they did last season. So if you're a Broncos fan, that would be an amazing pick, and I think it would also be an amazing pick for Ashton Jeanty. Let's go to the Steelers at 21. Look, we're just Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, like whatever. Okay, so let's go to the draft. What are they doing here at 21? Ryan has them taking Walter Nolan, defensive lineman, 6'4", 300 pounds. Josh, thumbs up, thumb down on this.
Yeah, I think it was John Schneider that cut my Wi-Fi there for a second. He didn't like the fact that we were talking about all the curveballs in the draft. It makes a lot of sense. Ryan's a Steelers fan, so I'll defer to him on this pick. But defensive line is on the short list of potential needs for the Steelers in this draft class. So walking away with a player that can give you a little bit of a future vision towards that defensive line that has an aging Cam Hayward, some of those other pieces on that unit, I think it's a good pick. I think Walter Nolan is a player that is going to be taken high. He is going to, he has this elite athletic profile that gives you a true pocket-pushing interior three-technique defensive tackle. I think it's a good pick for the Steelers here in the back half of the first round.
Ryan, do you want to?
Yeah, Amanda, you're exactly right about the Aaron Rodgers stuff. Yeah, the Aaron Rodgers stuff is what the holdup is here. And here's the other thing. They don't have a second-round pick because of the DK Metcalf trade, so I had them taking Walter Nolan, who on the field gets after it. He's going to be a lot of fun next to Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton, T.J. Watt, and Alex Highsmith. But in the third round, I have them taking a quarterback and Will Howard, and Steelers fans, as you might imagine, are about 50-50 split on that. I think that's right around the range that Will Howard goes off the board. The Steelers contingent were in Columbus a few weeks ago for that pro day, and I think that could be an opportunity to find their next quarterback should someone like Shedeur Sanders not slip to them at 21.
You would think the Aaron Rodgers thing is going to get done, some sort of decision before the draft. Let's go to the Chargers at 22, our second tight end off the board here in Colston Loveland. Ryan, it's interesting because you do have a lot of praise for this young man, but also point out notable areas where he needs to improve. So are you looking at a day one guy, and what are those areas?
Not only day one, Amanda, he's my tight end one, but I thought the fit in Indianapolis was a little better for Tyler Warren. But I do love the idea of him running routes for Jim Harbaugh and, of course, Justin Herbert. We talked to him at the Combine. His arm was in a sling, but he's going to be fully healthy, certainly in time for the season. And he runs routes like a big wide receiver, like a Ted McMillan almost, but he can run through arm tackles. He's going to get bigger and stronger, and I think he's going to add some explosiveness to an offense that at times felt stagnant in the pass game. They moved on for Josh Palmer. Quentin Johnson has been up and down. Ladd McConkey has been fantastic coming off that rookie campaign. So I love the idea of getting one more playmaker in the middle of the field for Justin Herbert.
Packers at 23. Ryan has them taking cornerback Trey Amos out of Ole Miss, another Ole Miss player here in this little segment that we're doing. Not everybody does have him going in the first round, but Ryan points out this is a player that should be rising. Josh, do you agree with that? And what do you think about him going to the Packers?
Well, first of all, I think he is a player that's rising, and it would not surprise me to be taken here at this stage of the first round. Green Bay historically uses their first-round picks on the defensive side of the ball. So you check the box there by giving them Trey Amos. Eric Stokes has signed with the Raiders in free agency. I don't expect Jair Alexander to be a part of the plan for this upcoming season. Yes, they did go out and they signed Nate Hobbs to a free agent deal. They already have some competent play out of the slot, but adding a player like Trey Amos, I think just gives you some depth, and it gives you another player that's capable of starting on the boundary and maybe moving Hobbs around in a way that's going to allow him to truly tap into his versatile skill set and make plays for that Packers defense.
We're seeing a run on DBs right now, according to Ryan Wilson in this portion of the draft, and that includes the Vikings at 24. It's Suvan Revel, is that right? Because it doesn't look how it's spelled, Ryan. Let's just make sure we get that. And everyone there, he's actually visiting the Vikings this week, so we know that they're interested in him. He tore his ACL in October. What else do we need to know about this young man?
long ball skills, fast on tape. We didn't see him run during the pre-draft process because of that ACL injury you talked about, but he's going to be pretty close to being 100%, I would imagine, by the summer, certainly heading into the season. Played at ECU. He's from Lewisburg, North Carolina, down the street from where old Ryan Wilson grew up. But here's the other thing. They have Isaiah Rodgers, who they signed. They signed Jeffrey Okudah, the former first-round pick. But they do need depth at the cornerback position and potentially even a starter. And Suvon Revel maybe doesn't start week 1 or week 2 because as he comes back from that injury, but he is going to be a long-time starter in the NFL if his NFL tape looks anything like what we saw in college. So I love the idea of him coming into that Brian Flores offense. Malachi Starks would certainly be a consideration here as well, Amanda, the safety out of Georgia. But I went with a big, long cornerback in Revel who could eventually morph into a starter early in his rookie campaign as soon as he's 100%.
Ryan, as we recap here and taking a look at 17 through 24, in your other drafts, have we seen a big run on DBs in this position? Kind of in this portion of the draft?
Yeah, this feels about the range. Yeah, absolutely. Even like Pittsburgh could be a consideration. The Chargers, we'll certainly talk about the Packers and the Vikings here, and I think this might be the opportunity for these guys to go off the board because teams know that once you get to the second round, that run's going to happen if it doesn't happen here late in the first.
And then, of course, we see Ashton Genting falling to the Broncos at 20. You guys are going to laugh when I tell you this. I heard somebody the other day call Buffalo the Miami of the North. Whether you agree with that, I don't know. However, a little sunshine is headed their way, according to Ryan Wilson. Josh Allen gets some help. We'll talk about it coming up. Welcome back into Spotlight. We are nearing the end of the first round. You can find Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, a 3-rounder, on CBSSports.com. Let's pick it up with the Texans at 25. Ryan has them taking offensive tackle Josh Simmons, transferred from San Diego State to Ohio State. Josh, let me ask you this. He hurt his knee, still decided to declare, could have gone back. Do you think that he should stay in the draft, and how much can he help the Texans?
Yeah, I thought, even though it was a limited sample size, that he was the best offensive tackle that I had seen through the first quarter of this season. So you're potentially getting a steal at this stage of the first round if you are Houston. There could have been an argument made that he should go back to school. He had just transferred in from San Diego State as well. So it really is a small sample size as to what NFL teams are working with when evaluating him. But Houston made this really easy for us when they traded Laramie Tunsil to the Commanders. Now they needed a left tackle. They went out and they signed Cam Robinson, but you need somebody that's going to be the future of the position there to block for C.J. Stroud. And at this stage of the first round, I think Josh Simmons is your best bet.
You talk about young players here. The Rams at 26. Ryan has them taking a young player, just turned 21 back in February. Jahad Campbell out of Alabama, linebacker here. But Ryan, you also mentioned he is one of the best players in this class. Why is that?
Yeah, and we talk a lot about Jalen Walker, who had gone a little bit earlier, but I actually like Jahad Campbell a little better. They're both fantastic players and do similar things. But I think that Jahad's future is probably at off-ball linebacker, which is a need for the Rams. And the Rams have had great success in recent years drafting on the defensive side of the ball, first, second, third round. Jared Verse and Braden Fisk last year, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, and the list goes on. I think you add one more young difference maker, freakishly athletic guy who's only going to get better in Jahad Campbell, and that feels like it makes a ton of sense on a team where you have Matthew Stafford coming back one more year. Had it been a situation where Matthew Stafford decided to retire and move on, quarterback would certainly be a need, but they're okay for now, so they continue to stock up that defense. Excuse me
for saying bop at a bop. I was looking to see for our next one, the Ravens, who Josh had them taking because I kind of wanted to compare it. Because the Ravens, look, it's one of those teams like the next couple teams we're talking about, but specifically this Ravens team. They have been so close yet so far, constantly just trying to find and pick those little players to help them to get a little bit better. Ryan is going with safety Malachi Starks. It's a name we've heard quite a bit of over the last season. Josh, what do you think about this pick?
Yeah, I like the pick. It's great value at this stage of the first round. The way that they deploy Kyle Hamilton, using him in different ways, now you have a player like Malachi Starks, who is that true ball hawk in that secondary, kind of gives you that freedom to move Hamilton around and do some of the things that they like to do. But we've talked about some of the expectations for drafts over the past 10 years. The Saints take an offensive lineman, the Seahawks throw us a curveball, and players fall to the Ravens. It happens every year. They get a player that we did not expect to be available, and in this case, it just happens to be Starks, who I don't know how Ryan views him currently, but I think he's easily one of the top 15, if not top 10 players in this draft class.
Then you should be very happy to get him at 27. Let's go to the Lions at 28. They're getting some inside help on the offensive line, according to Ryan Wilson. Gray Zabel, this is a man out of North Dakota State, so maybe not familiar to everyone. What do we need to know about Gray Zabel?
He's a fantastic football player. Played primarily left tackle last season for North Dakota State. Went to the Senior Bowl and only played guard and center, and looked like he'd been doing it his entire life. Great in terms of the practice session, the 3 practices in the Senior Bowl. But he's also a fantastic leader. And you talk to teams that say he's going to be a team captain on day one. He feels like a Dan Campbell / Brad Holmes / Chris Spielman type player going to Detroit, where he has an opportunity to start on day one at the guard position.
Commanders at 29, defensive lineman Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. It is noted he is huge for an edge rusher, 6'5", 267, but he went to Texas A&M, so that's no surprise there. I say that being from Texas. We get good barbecue and good Mexican food down there. He's been eating well. How does he fit in with this Commanders team, Josh?
Edge rusher is a premier need for Washington. I think that's going to be a priority for them to fill this offseason. And Shamar Stewart is like that Dorrance Armstrong type, big, strong, athletic defensive end that Dan Quinn was accustomed to having in Dallas. So I think this makes a lot of sense. You're checking a box in terms of need. I also think you're getting good value here in Stewart, who, similar to Nick Emanwari, who we talked about earlier, was one of the clear standouts in terms of athletic testing at the NFL Combine.
We're seeing a lot of defensive players right now. However, the next one is the Bills, and this is what we teased. They are getting an offensive weapon for Josh Allen, Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden. I got to cover him, do a couple games for him. A pleasure to cover on the field, and just incredibly talented. How much can he help this Bills offense, Ryan?
I'm still trying to wrap my brain around the idea that Buffalo is the Miami of New York. I live 3 hours from Buffalo, and I don't know
the Miami
exactly
of the North.
How that
the
works,
Miami of the North. I don't know where this lady came up with it, but that's what she said.
Hey, look, if that's what it takes to get Luther Burden to Buffalo, then by all means.
There you go.
I think
go for it.
The issue, and you saw him in 2023 when Brady Cook was healthy. Last year, 2024, Brady Cook wasn't quite as healthy, and Luther Burden's numbers were suffered as a result. That's no reflection of Luther Burden. He just can get the football. And I think if you go to someplace like Buffalo, the Miami of the North, where Josh Allen is always healthy and always making plays, you are going to have the ball in your hands, and you're going to have an opportunity for yards after the catch consistently. And I think he brings a little more juice that Keon Coleman may not have. They signed Josh Palmer. They have Khalil Shakir, who got that new deal and well-deserved, in addition to their tight ends. And then suddenly this offense has another explosive playmaker that can push the ball down the field. And that's what they were lacking at times last season.
Yeah, I like the fit here because Luther Burden, I think, is being undervalued at this stage of the pre-draft process. A player that was a top 10 player coming into this season, somebody that is incredibly dynamic after the catch. Now you get like this give-and-go type offense in Buffalo where you've got an athletic quarterback like Josh Allen. Just get the ball to Burden in space and allow him to create missed tackles after the catch. I think it's a really good fit here and would certainly make Buffalo more interesting moving forward.
Got about 2 minutes left in the show. Let's go to the Chiefs at 31. Ryan, you have them taking edge rusher Darius Alexander. Josh, let me ask you this. Look, he's from Toledo, and it looks like he's one of these guys that not necessarily during the season, but really postseason has helped himself a lot.
Yeah, it's similar to Carl Brooks, who was taken out of Bowling Green a couple of years ago. They played him on the edge, but this is a player that has that flexibility to line up inside. You can play him on the edge in certain situations. Just gives Kansas City a little bit more flexibility in terms of where he's used positionally. But Amanda, as you noted, there were a lot of defensive backs that had been taken prior to this selection. And I know Buffalo and Kansas City would have loved to get their hands on a couple of those. But Kansas City, you know, they stick to their board. They take a player that is going to help them solidify that interior defensive line depth.
A lot of DBs, a lot of edge rushers, and that is the final pick in this. Going to the Eagles at 32, James Pierce from Tennessee. Ryan, why do you like him here, getting the last pick in the first round?
I like him about 15 picks higher. There are going to be some off-field concerns. I'm talking to some teams that have him off the board. I don't know if the Eagles do or not, and that's why I have him falling here, because they have been known to take chances on players and get the most out of their abilities both on and off the field. James Pierce is special as a football player, and if the Eagles think that he checks out off the field, this would be a steal here based on the way he played for the Volunteers.
All right, let's recap. Let's take a look at it. The final picks of the first round. By the way, you can find Ryan's entire mock on CBSSports.com. James Pierce talked about maybe some off-the-field issues. Birds fans will keep you posted on that. Josh Simmons going to Texans at 25, deciding to go into the draft instead of returning to Ohio State for another season.